The emergency room doors burst open at 2:47 a.m. A four-star general was wheeled in, unconscious. Bleeding from a head wound, the chief surgeon reached for his gloves, but the general's security detail stopped him cold. "Sir, step back." The surgeon stared. "What? I'm the head of trauma." The general gave explicit orders. The agent's voice was ice. "He refuses surgery unless she operates." Every head turned toward the young woman in the corner, the one they called the med student, the one who never spoke, less spoken to. She stood slowly. Her hands were steady, but her eyes belonged to someone else entirely, someone the hospital had never met. And in 6 hours, everything they thought they knew about her would shatter. Dr. Marcus Chen had been chief of surgery for 12 years. He had seen everything. Train derailments, gang shootouts, a gas explosion that brought in 43 victims in one night, but he had never been told to step away from a patient, not once. He stared at the woman across the room. Sarah Bennett, 26 years old, medical student. Third rotation, quiet, competent enough. Nothing special. She wore pale blue scrubs. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. She had the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting her. Forgettable was the point. "There's been a mistake," Dr. Chen said slowly. He turned to the agent blocking his path. The man wore a black suit and an earpiece. His jaw could have been carved from granite. "I don't know what the general told you, but that woman is a student. She shadows. She observes. She doesn't operate." The agent didn't blink. "She does today." Sarah crossed the room. Her footsteps made no sound on the linoleum floor. She moved like water. Smooth, effortless. The kind of movement you only get from years of training, most people would never survive. She stopped in front of Dr. Chen. With respect. "Doctor," she said quietly, "I need you to clear the room." Dr. Chen's face went red. "Excuse me?" "The general's security clearance requires it." Her voice was calm. Flat. No emotion. Just facts. "You'll be briefed after the surgery. Right now I need this room sealed. This is insane." Dr. Chen looked around for support. The other doctors stood frozen, confused, angry. "Can't just Dr. Chen." Sarah met his eyes, and for just a moment, he saw something flicker there. Something cold and ancient and utterly without fear. "Please." It wasn't a request. It was an order. Dr. Chen's mouth went dry. He wanted to argue. Wanted to call security. Wanted to throw this girl out of his hospital and report whoever put her up to this insane stunt. But he didn't, because that look in her eyes told him something his brain couldn't quite process. She had done this. Before, many times before, and the people who refused to listen were no longer around to complain about it. "Everyone out," he heard himself say. Now, the room emptied. Nurses whispered as they filed into the hallway. Residents pulled out their phones, already texting about the chaos. Dr. Chen was the last to leave. He paused at the door. Sarah was already scrubbing in. Her movements were precise, practiced. She moved like a surgeon with 20 years of experience. Like someone who had operated in places where one mistake meant death for everyone in the room. "Who are you?" Dr. Chen whispered. Sarah didn't turn around. "Someone who keeps their promises, doctor." The door closed. And if you've made it this far, you know this story is just getting started. Hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about the people who walk among us in silence. Inside the sealed operating room, Sarah Bennett pulled on surgical gloves. The general lay on the table. His face was pale. Blood matted his silver hair. The monitors beeped steadily, tracking a pulse that was growing weaker. She had met General William Hardcastle exactly twice. The first time was in Kandahar. She had been embedded with a special operations team. He had flown in for a classified briefing. Their eyes met across a dusty command tent. He nodded once. A silent acknowledgement. Operator to operator. The second time was in a Syrian bunker. Sarah had been bleeding from 3 bullet wounds. The general had dragged her to the extraction point himself, carried her the last 200 meters while mortar fire rained. Down around them, he had saved her life. Now she would save his. Sarah examined the wound. A depressed skull fracture, subdural hematoma. The kind of injury that required absolute precision. One slip and the general would die. Or worse, he'd survive as a vegetable. Locked inside a body that no longer obeyed him. She reached for the scalpel. Her hand didn't shake. It never did. Outside in the hallway, Dr. Chen paced. His phone buzzed. Text after text. Questions from the hospital board. From other departments, everyone wanted to know what the hell was happening. He didn't have answers. The security agents stood like statues at the operating room doors. 6 of them now, all armed. All watching the hallway with eyes that missed nothing. This wasn't hospital security. This was something else. One of the agents touched, listened, then spoke into his wrist mic. Perimeter is secure. All exits covered. We're clear. Dr. Chen stopped pacing. Perimeter. What perimeter? The agent ignored him, and that's when Dr. Chen walked to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. Black SUVs surrounded the hospital, dozens of them. Men in tactical gear were setting up checkpoints at every entrance. A helicopter circled overhead, searchlight cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. The entire building was locked. Down for a medical student, Dr. Chen's phone rang. He answered without looking at the caller ID. Marcus. The voice was cold, clipped, military. This is Colonel Vance from Fort Bragg. I need you to listen very carefully. What's happening in your hospital right now is classified at the highest level. You will not speak about it. You will not record it. You will not question it. Do you understand? What? Do you understand? Dr. Chen swallowed. Yes. The line went dead. He stood there, phone still pressed to his ear, staring at his own reflection in the window. Behind that door, a woman he had dismissed as ordinary was performing surgery on a 4-star general, and the United States military had just locked down an entire hospital to make sure she could do it in peace. Dr. Chen finally understood. He didn't know who Sarah Bennett was, but he was absolutely certain of one thing. She was no medical student. Sarah made the first incision. The scalpel moved through skin and tissue with perfect control. No hesitation. No second guessing. She had learned to cut in places where hesitation meant death. In field hospitals with no power. In safe houses with nothing but vodka. For sterilization and a prayer for anesthesia, she had learned. From the best combat surgeons in the world, and from a few who weren't surgeons at all, just operators, who knew that when you're 200 miles behind enemy lines, you either learn to fix your teammate or you carry their body home. The general's skull was fractured in 3 places. Blood pooled beneath the bone, pressing against his brain. Every second counted. Sarah worked in silence. Outside, the hospital was waking up. The morning shift was arriving. Nurses with coffee. Doctors yawning through their rounds. Patients waiting for breakfast. None of them knew that their building was surrounded, that every exit was blocked, that the woman they had ignored for 3 months was currently holding a man's life in her hands, a man whose decisions had shaped wars, toppled governments, and sent thousands of soldiers into battle. Dr. Chen watched the hallway like a man in a nightmare. Residents whispered. Nurses asked questions he couldn't answer, and then Dr. Patricia Reeves arrived. Reeves was the hospital administrator. 58 years old, Harvard Medical, 20 years running major hospitals. She wore a tailored suit and an expression that could freeze boiling water. She did not appreciate chaos in her hospital. Marcus. Her voice cut through the whispers like a knife. What is going on? Dr. Chen opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Can't tell you, excuse me? I received a call. From Fort Bragg. I was told this situation is classified. Reeves stared at him like he'd just claimed the moon was made of cheese. Classified. This is a hospital, not a military base. I want answers. Now. One of the agents stepped forward. Ma'am, I need you to step back. Reeves turned her glare on him. Young man, I run this hospital. I don't take orders from ma'am. The agent's hand moved to his sidearm. Not threatening, just present. Step back. The hallway went silent. Reeves looked at the gun. At the agent's face, at the 5 other agents flanking the door, she stepped back. This is outrageous, she whispered. But she didn't move forward again. Inside the operating room, Sarah was lifting a piece of fractured skull. Her hands moved with absolute precision, millimeter by millimeter. One wrong move and a bone fragment could sever an artery. The general would bleed out in seconds. She had seen it happen once, in Baghdad, a young Marine. 19 years old. I'd blast. Skull fracture just like this one. The field surgeon had been good, experienced, but the conditions were impossible. No light, no proper tools. Mortar falling 100 meters away. The surgeon's hand slipped up just a fraction. The Marine died choking on his own blood. Sarah had held his hand while the light left his eyes. Had written the letter to his mother. Had promised herself she would never let it happen again. Her hands didn't slip. Asterisk. She removed the bone fragment. Suctioned the blood. Exposed the brain beneath. The hematoma was massive. A dark pool pressing against delicate tissue. She needed to drain it without causing a stroke. Without triggering a seizure. Without killing the one man who knew where all the bodies were buried. Literally, Sarah Pierce wasn't her real name. She had 17 names, 17 identities, 17 lives she could slip into like changing clothes, but only one real rank. And if the general died, that rank would die with him, because he was the only person left who knew what she really was. She inserted the drain. Blood flowed into the suction tube, dark, thick. The pressure on the general's brain began to ease. His vitals steadied. Sarah allowed herself one small breath of relief. Then she went back to work. 3 hours passed. Dr. Chen had given up trying to manage the situation. The hospital was in chaos. Patients were asking why men with guns were in the lobby. Families were demanding answers. The media was gathering outside, and all he could do was stand in the hallway and wait. Reeves had made 17 phone calls. To the mayor, to the hospital's legal team, to her contacts at the state health department. No one could tell her anything. Or no one would. At 6:47 a.m., the operating room door opened. Sarah stepped out. Her scrubs were spattered with blood. Her face was calm, composed. She pulled off her surgical mask and met Dr. Chun's eyes. The general is stable, she said quietly. He'll need monitoring, but he'll live. Dr. Chen stared at her. You just performed a craniotomy. A full craniotomy. Without supervision. Without permission, Sarah finished. Yes, that's impossible. You're a third-year student. You shouldn't even know how to. I know a lot of things, doctor. The lead agent touched his earpiece, listened, nodded. Ma'am, he said to Sarah, your transport is inbound. ETA 12 minutes. Sarah nodded. Understood. She turned to leave. Wait, Dr. Chen's voice cracked. Wait, you can't just walk away. I need answers. The board needs answers. We need to know who authorized this, who you are. What the hell is happening? Sarah stopped, turned, looked at him with those cold, ancient eyes. In 12 minutes, the general will be evacuated to a secure medical facility. In 20 minutes, these agents will be gone. In 30 minutes, your hospital will return to normal. And by tomorrow morning, you'll receive a call from someone very important telling you to forget this ever happened. If I don't forget, Sarah's expression didn't change. You will, doctor. Trust me. Everyone does. She walked away. Dr. Chen watched her go. Watched the way the armed agents parted for her like water. Watched the way she moved, not like a student, not like a doctor, but like someone who had walked through fire and came out the other side made of iron. Reeves appeared at his shoulder. "Marcus," she whispered, "what did we just witness?" Dr. Chen shook his head. "I have absolutely no idea." But he was lying. Because deep down, in a place he didn't want to examine too closely, he knew exactly what he had witnessed. He had witnessed a ghost, shadow, someone who existed in the spaces between official records and classified files. Someone who saved lives in the dark so that people like him could sleep safely in the light. At 7:02 a.m., a helicopter landed on the hospital roof. The general was loaded aboard on a stretcher, still unconscious. Still alive? Sarah watched from the rooftop door. The lead agent approached her. "They're asking if you want to accompany the general to Walter Reed." Sarah shook her head. "No, I have a shift in 53 minutes. Dr. Chen expects me in the ER. The agent blinked. "Ma'am, after what just happened, I'm going back to being a medical student." Sarah's voice was firm. That was the deal. 3 months embedded. Learn the systems. Understand civilian medicine. Then back to work. "Understood, ma'am." The helicopter lifted off. The roar of rotors shook the building. Sarah watched it disappear into the morning sky. Then she turned and walked back into the hospital. Back to being nobody. Back to being invisible. But in the hallway below, Dr. Chen stood with his phone in his hand, staring at a text message that had just arrived. From a number with no caller ID, it read, "Thank you for your cooperation, doctor. What happened today never happened. The woman you met doesn't exist. But if you ever need her again, she'll be there. They always are." Dr. Chen deleted the message. But he knew he would never forget it. Never forget her. And somewhere in the back of his mind a question burned. If she was this good at 26, what would she become? Sarah Bennett showed up to her shift exactly on time. 7:58 a.m. She wore clean scrubs. Her hair was pulled back. She carried a coffee from the cafeteria and a medical textbook under her arm. She looked like every other exhausted medical student in the hospital. Dr. Chen saw her walk past his office. He almost called out, almost demanded answers, almost grabbed her by the arm and forced her to explain what the hell had happened on his operating table. But he didn't, because when she glanced his way, her eyes were different, softer, younger, almost uncertain. The mask was back on. The operator was gone. And in her place was a 26-year-old student who just wanted to learn medicine. Dr. Chen let her walk away. The morning passed in routine chaos. A car accident brought in 2 patients. A construction worker arrived with a nail through his hand. An elderly woman complained of chest pains that turned out to be anxiety. Sarah moved through it all like a shadow. She held retractors during a minor surgery. She updated patient charts. She fetched supplies for the nurses. She smiled when spoken to, said yes. "Dr. Ann right away, and I'll check on that." She was perfect. Perfectly ordinary, perfectly forgettable, but Dr. Chen watched her. Watched the way her eyes tracked the room, the way she positioned herself near exits, the way her hand unconsciously touched her hip where a sidearm would normally rest. Little tells, tiny, fractures in the disguise. At 2 p.m., everything changed. Sarah was in the break room, alone, eating a sandwich she'd brought from home. Reading a chapter on cardiac pathology, the hospital's public address system crackled to life. Code Silver. Code Silver. All personnel shelter in place. Code Silver. Sarah's head snapped up. Code Silver meant an active threat. An armed intruder. A hostage situation. She was on her feet before the announcement finished. The hallway outside erupted in controlled panic. Nurses herded patients into rooms. Doctors locked doors. Security guards appeared with radios and grim expressions. Sarah moved against the flow. While everyone else was hiding, she was walking toward the threat. A security guard tried to stop her. "Miss, you need to get to a safe room where..." Sarah's voice was sharp. Command voice. The guard blinked in surprise. "What? Where is the threat?" "Main lobby." "But you can't." Sarah was already moving. She reached the stairwell, took the stairs 3 at a time. Her mind was calculating, analyzing. If this was random, she'd assess and withdraw. But if this was targeted, if someone had come for the general, learned he'd been here, then the hospital was about to become a war zone. She hit the ground floor. The lobby was chaos. A man stood in the center. 40 years old, wild eyes. He wore a heavy coat despite the warm weather. One hand was inside the coat, the universal sign of a concealed weapon. 20 people were frozen around him, visitors, patients in wheelchairs, a mother clutching a child. Hospital security was positioned behind pillars, guns drawn, but they couldn't shoot. Too many civilians. Too much risk. Sarah assessed the situation in 3 seconds. The man was sweating, shaking. His eyes were dilated. Drugs, maybe. Or extreme stress. He was shouting, but his words were incoherent. A rambling speech about betrayal and secrets and people who were trying to kill him. Paranoid delusion. Or paranoid reality. Sarah needed to know which. She stepped into the lobby. "Sarah, get back." One of the security guards hissed at her. She ignored him. "Is-er," she called out. Her voice was calm, steady. She walked toward the man with her hands visible. Open palms. No threat. "Sir, my name is Sarah. I'm a medical student. I want to help you." The man spun toward her. Stay back, or I'm not armed," Sarah said. She kept walking. Slow steps. Measured. "I'm just a student. I'm here to learn. To help people. That includes you. You're one of them." The man's hand tightened inside his coat. "You're all working for them." "I don't work for anyone except the patients," Sarah said. She was 10 feet away now. Close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. Close enough to smell the fear radiating off him. "Talk to me. Tell me what's wrong." The man's eyes darted around the room, searching for invisible enemies. "They're watching. Always watching. They put things in my head, devices, listening to my thoughts." Sarah's expression softened. "That must be terrifying." "It is." The man's voice cracked. "No one believes me. The doctors say I'm crazy, but I'm not crazy. I know what they did." "I believe you," Sarah said quietly, and she meant it, because she knew that sometimes the paranoid delusions were real. Sometimes people really were being hunted. Sometimes the conspiracy theories were just classified operations that hadn't been declassified yet. She had lived that truth for years. "You do?" The man's hand wavered.
"I do."
"But right now, you're scaring people. People who have nothing to do with what happened to you. Innocent people." The man looked around. Saw the terrified faces. The mother covering her child's eyes. An old man in a wheelchair, frozen in fear, his face crumpled. "I didn't want to scare anyone. I just wanted someone to listen." "I'm listening," Sarah said. She was 5 feet away now. "But I need you to take your hand out of your coat, slowly. Can you do that for me?" The man hesitated. Then, slowly, he pulled his hand out. It was empty. No gun, no knife, no weapon at all. He had been bluffing the whole time. He collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Sarah was at his side in an instant. She knelt beside him, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. You're okay. We're going to get you help." Real help. Security moved in. Carefully, they cuffed the man, but Sarah stayed with him, speaking in low, soothing tones. Dr. Chen appeared in the lobby doorway. He had watched the whole thing from the stairwell, watched a medical student talk down an armed threat while trained security guards stood frozen. Watched her move with the confidence of a hostage negotiator. Watched her risk her life for strangers without hesitation. She was no longer pretending. The mask had slipped. And Dr. Chen was starting to understand just how deep the rabbit hole went. The man was taken to the psychiatric ward. Sarah wrote up a detailed report for the attending psychiatrist. Recommended a full evaluation for delusional disorder with possible PTSD. She wrote it in clear, clinical language. Like someone who had seen this kind of trauma before. Many times before, At 6 p.m., her shift ended. Sarah packed her things, said goodnight to the nurses, walked toward the exit like any other exhausted student heading home after a long day, but Dr. Chen followed her. "Sarah?" She stopped, turned. "That was incredible," Dr. Chen said. "What you did in the lobby, that could have ended very badly." Sarah shrugged. "He wasn't armed, just scared." "How did you know?" "I didn't, not for certain." "Then why risk it?" Sarah met his eyes. "Because someone had to." Dr. Chen studied her face, searching for cracks in the facade. "You've done that before. Talked someone down. I've talked to a lot of scared people, doctor. That's not what I mean." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I know what you mean, doctor, and I'm sorry, but I can't give you the answers you want." "Can't or won't?" "Both." Dr. Chen took a step closer, lowered his voice. "This morning, you saved a general's life. This afternoon, you stopped a hostage situation. You're not a normal medical student." "No," Sarah agreed quietly. "I'm not." "Then what are you?" Sarah smiled, sad, tired. The smile of someone carrying weight no one else could see. "I'm someone trying to learn how to save lives without a rifle in my hands, doctor. That's all you need to know." She turned and walked away. Dr. Chen watched her go, and for the first time in his career, he understood that some questions had answers he wasn't cleared to hear. Sarah Bennett walked out of the hospital into the cool evening air. A black sedan was waiting at the curb. She got in without hesitation. The driver didn't speak, just pulled into traffic and drove. In the back seat, Sarah closed her eyes. 2 missions in one day. She was getting sloppy, or the universe was testing her. Either way, tomorrow she'd be back in those scrubs, back to being invisible, back to being the quiet girl no one noticed. But tonight, just for a moment, she allowed herself to remember who she really was. Major Sarah Pierce, Delta Force, Tier 1 operator, and the most dangerous woman most people would never know existed. The next 2 weeks passed in careful routine. Sarah arrived at 7:58 a.m., left at 6 p.m., studied in the library, took notes during rounds, asked questions that were smart but not too smart. She was perfect at being average. Dr. Chen stopped watching her quite so closely. The hospital returned to normal. The Code Silver incident was written off as a mental health crisis. Successfully de-escalated. No one mentioned the general. It was as if it had never happened, except late at night. When Dr. Chen lay awake, staring at his ceiling, he could still see her eyes, could still hear her voice giving orders to men with guns, could still feel the certainty that he had witnessed something he was never supposed to see. On Tuesday morning, everything changed again. Sarah was in the ER, suturing a laceration on a teenager who'd fallen off his skateboard. She worked with steady hands, making small talk about the kid's favorite bands. Her pager buzzed. She glanced down. The number displayed was not a hospital extension. It was a sequence she'd memorized years ago, one that meant only one thing: emergency extraction, immediate deployment. Sarah's hands didn't falter. She finished the last suture, applied the bandage, gave the kid care instructions, and sent him on his way with a smile. Then she walked calmly to the bathroom. Locked. The door, pulled out a phone from a hidden pocket in her SCR UBs. It wasn't the iPhone she carried for show. This was a hardened tactical phone, encrypted, untraceable. She dialed a number from memory. 2 rings, Pierce. The voice was clipped. Military, her handler. Sarah said quietly, "What's the situation?" "We have a problem. The general is awake. He's asking for you. Says he needs to speak with you immediately." "Classified briefing." Sarah closed her eyes. "I'm in the middle of a shift, I know. But this is priority alpha. Whatever he knows, it's big enough that he's refusing to speak to anyone else." "Understood." "I need 30 minutes to clear my schedule." "You have 20. The line went dead. Sarah stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection. She looked tired, young, vulnerable. The disguise had become almost too comfortable. She splashed water on her face, took 3 deep breaths. Then she unlocked the door and stepped back into the hallway. Dr. Chen was standing right outside. Their eyes met. "I need to leave early today," Sarah said. "Family emergency." Dr. Chen studied her face. "Is everything all right?" "It will be. I just need to go." "Of course." Dr. Chen nodded, but his eyes said he knew she was lying. "Take all the time you need." Sarah grabbed her bag from her locker. She was out of the hospital in 4 minutes. The black sedan was already waiting. She got in. The driver pulled away before her door was fully closed. Sarah asked. "Negative. He's been moved to a secure location. Fort Beaver. Underground medical facility." Sarah nodded. "Of course, if the general was talking about classified operations, he wouldn't do it in a normal hospital." The drive took 40 minutes. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, each one more serious than the last. At the final gate, an armed guard checked her credentials. Not the fake ones she used at the hospital. The real ones, Major Sarah Pierce. Clearance level, top. Secret C. The guard saluted. Sarah returned it. The sedan descended into an underground parking structure, then into an elevator that went down, down, down into the earth. When the doors opened, she was in a medical facility that officially didn't exist. A colonel was waiting for her. Major Pierce. The general is stable, but insistent. He's been asking for you every hour. What's his condition? Recovering well, neurologically intact. Memory fully functional, but he's agitated. Says what he needs to tell you. Can't wait. Sarah followed the colonel through sterile white corridors. Armed guards stood at every intersection. Cameras tracked their movement. This wasn't just a hospital, it was a vault. The general's room was at the DH end of the hall. 2 guards flanked the door. They snapped to attention when Sarah approached. She entered alone. General William Hardcastle sat propped up in bed. His head was bandaged. 4 lines ran from his arms, but his eyes were sharp, alert. Major Pierce. His voice was rough but strong. "Thank you for coming." Sarah stood at attention. "Sir, I'm glad to see you recovering at ease, Major." The general gestured to a chair. "Sit. We need to talk." Sarah sat. Waited. The general was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was grave. 3 days ago, before the accident, I received intelligence. Something big. Something that's going to change everything. Sir, there's a mole. High level. Someone in the intelligence community has been selling classified information to hostile actors. Not just documents. Operational details. Names of operators in the field. Sarah's blood ran cold. How many names? We don't know yet. But Pierce, your name might be on that list. The room seemed to tilt. Sarah had spent 8 years operating in the shadows. 8 years building cover identities. 8 years staying invisible. If her name was out there, are you certain? Her voice was steady, professional, but inside, alarms were screaming. Not yet. But I need you to go dark, immediately. Burn the medical student cover. Disappear. Sir, with respect, if I disappear right now, it will draw attention. I've been at that hospital for 3 months. If I vanish without explanation, then people will ask questions. I know. The general leaned forward, winced. That's why I need you to do something else first, sir. We need to find the mole, and I think he's going to come looking for me. Sarah understood immediately. You want to use yourself as bait? Yes. But I can't do it from a secure military facility. I need to be vulnerable, accessible. You want to go back to the civilian hospital? Exactly. And I want you there, watching, waiting. When the mole makes his move, you take him down. Sarah was already shaking her head. Sir, you're in no condition. I'm in perfect condition to catch a traitor, Major. The general's eyes were hard. This bastard has already gotten good people killed. Operators, people we trained, people we trusted. I won't let him get away with it. Sarah sat back, processed it was a good plan. Risky, but good. Put the general in a soft target. Make him look vulnerable. Wait for the mole to make a move, and when he did, Sarah would be there. When? She asked. Tomorrow. I'm transferring back to the civilian hospital. The official story is I need specialized cardiac care. Unofficial story is I'm sitting in the kill zone waiting for a traitor to show his face. And my role? You go back to being Sarah Bennett, medical student. You stay close. You watch. You wait. And when the time comes, the general's voice dropped. You do what you do best. Sarah nodded slowly. Understood, sir. One more thing. The general reached for a folder on his bedside table, handed it to her. These are the suspects. 3 people. All high level. All with access to the intelligence that's been leaked. Sarah opened the folder. 3 names. 3 photos. 3 career military officers with decades of service. Any one of them could be the traitor. I'll find him, sir. I know you will, Major. The general settled back against his pillows. You always do. Sarah left the room. Her mind was already racing, planning, calculating. Tomorrow she'd go back to the hospital, back to being nobody. But this time, she wouldn't be learning medicine. She'd be hunting. The drive back to the city was silent. Sarah stared out the window, watching the suburbs blur past. Somewhere out there, a traitor was selling secrets. Somewhere out there, operators were dying because someone they trusted had betrayed them. And tomorrow, that someone was going to walk into a hospital expecting to find an easy target. Instead, they would find her. Sarah allowed herself a cold smile. She almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The sedan dropped her at her apartment. A small 1-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place a struggling medical student would live. She went through her evening routine. Made dinner. Studied medical textbooks. Watched half an episode of a sitcom. All of it performance. All of it cover. But in the back of her mind, she was planning. Mapping the hospital. Identifying weak points. Calculating fields of fire. Becoming the weapon she had been trained to be. At midnight, she went to her closet. Pushed aside the clothes. Opened a hidden panel in the wall. Inside was everything Sarah Bennett, the medical student, would never need. A Glock 19, suppressed tactical knife. Flex cuffs. A go bag with 3 passports, cash in for currencies, and a satellite phone. Sarah ran her hand over the pistol grip. It felt like coming home. Tomorrow, she would put on scrubs and smile at doctors and pretend to be harmless. But underneath, she would be coiled steel, waiting for the moment to strike. And when that moment came, God help whoever stood in her way. The hospital received the news at 6 a.m. General Hardcastle is being transferred back to their facility. Specialized cardiac monitoring. Complications from the surgery. The official story sounded plausible enough. Dr. Chen was suspicious immediately. The general had been stable when he left. Healthy enough for transport to a military facility. Why come back to a civilian hospital? Unless there was another reason. He watched Sarah arrive for her shift at exactly 7:58 a.m. She looked the same as always. Tired, ordinary, forgettable. But he noticed small changes. The way she positioned herself, with a clear view of all entrances. The way her eyes tracked every person who entered the floor. Way her hand occasionally brushed the small of her back, where someone might carry a concealed weapon. Dr. Chen said nothing, but he knew. Something was about to happen. The general arrived at 9 o'clock a.m. He was wheeled in on a gurney, surrounded by the same security detail from before. But this time, they positioned themselves differently. Not as protection, as bait. Sarah watched from the nurse's station. She had volunteered to be on the general's care team. No one questioned it. She had saved his life. After all, Dr. Chen assigned her to monitor the general's vitals every hour. It gave her a perfect excuse to be in his room, to watch, to wait. The morning passed slowly. Sarah checked the general's blood pressure, updated his chart, made small talk with the nurses, All the while, her mind was cataloging every person who entered the floor. The suspects from the folder were all in motion. Colonel James Merrick, 52 years old, intelligence liaison. He had clearance to access operational details. He was currently in D.C., according to his official schedule, but Sarah knew better than to trust official schedules. Commander, Patricia Hayes, 48, Navy Intelligence. Brilliant analyst, 25 years of service. And recently, 3 unexplained deposits to an offshore account. Major David Cross, 39, Special Operations Coordinator. He had survived 4 deployments. Lost half his team in Syria. Some said it broke him. Made him question everything. Any of them could be the mole. All of them had motive. Access opportunity, Sarah. Just had to wait for one of them to make a mistake. At 2 p.m., the first visitor arrived. A man in a suit. 50 years old, graying hair. He flashed credentials to the security detail. Defense Intelligence Agency, Sarah watched from down the hall. The man entered the general's room. Stayed for 12 minutes. Emerged looking tense. Sarah memorized his face, his walk, the way he touched his watch when he was nervous. Then she went back to her charts. At 4 p.m., a woman arrived. 45, business casual. She claimed to be from the Veterans Affairs Office. Routine follow-up on the general's benefits. Sarah didn't buy it, no. VA administrator made house calls to 4-star generals. She watched the woman through the window in the general's door. Saw the way the general's jaw tightened, the way his hands clenched the sheets. The woman left after 8 minutes. Sarah followed her. The woman took the stairs instead of the elevator. Moved quickly. Checking her phone every few seconds, Sarah stayed 2 flights behind. Silent as smoke. The woman exited into the parking garage. Got into a gray sedan. Made a phone call. Sarah couldn't hear the conversation, but she read the woman's body language. Agitated. Afraid. The sedan pulled away. Sarah memorized the license plate. Sent a text on her encrypted phone. 2 minutes later, the response came back. Vehicle registered to a shell company. Flagged for surveillance. Patricia Hayes, the Naval Intelligence Officer. Sarah's pulse quickened. She had her suspect, but she needed proof. Needed to catch Hayes in the act. Sarah went back inside. Back to being a medical student, but now she knew who to watch. At 7 p.m. Dr. Chen found Sarah in the break room. You're working late, he said. The general needs close monitoring. I volunteered for the overnight shift, Sarah. Dr. Chen's voice was quiet. What's really happening? Sarah looked up from her coffee. Her eyes were tired. But behind the exhaustion was something else. Something hard and bright. I'm doing my job, doctor. Your job as a medical student? Or something else? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood. Walked to the break room door. Checked that they were alone. Dr. Chen, she said softly. In a few hours, something might happen. If it does, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? What kind of something? The kind where people might get scared. But I promise you, I will keep everyone safe. Dr. Chen's stomach twisted. Sarah, please, just trust me. She left before he could respond. Dr. Chen stood alone in the break room, and for the first time in his career, considered leaving the hospital. Going home, pretending he'd never met Sarah Bennett. But he didn't, because somewhere deep inside, he knew tonight he would see who she really was. At 11 p.m., the hospital was quiet. Most of the day's staff had gone home. The night shift moved through the halls. With the careful efficiency of people used to working in silence, Sarah sat in a chair outside the general's room. Reading a medical journal? Looking half asleep? It was all performance. Every sense was on high alert. The security detail had been reduced. Only 2 agents now? The general had insisted, said it would make him look more vulnerable. It did. At 11:47 p.m., the fire alarm went off. The entire floor erupted in chaos. Nurses checking rooms, patients asking questions. Security guards on radios trying to determine if the threat was real. Sarah was on her feet instantly. This was it. The mole was making their move. She glanced at the general's room. The two guards were still at the door, but they were distracted. Focused on the alarm, Sarah moved. She slipped past the nurse's station, took the stairs to the floor below, emerged in a storage corridor, and there she was. Commander Patricia Hayes, wearing scrubs stolen from a locker room, a silenced pistol in her hand. Moving toward the service elevator that would take her directly to the general's floor, Sarah stepped into her path. Hayes froze. For 1 second. Recognition flashed in her eyes. "You," Hayes breathed. "Me," Sarah confirmed. Hayes raised the pistol. Sarah moved faster. She closed the distance in 3 steps, grabbed Hayes's wrist, twisted. The joint gave with a sickening pop. Hayes screamed. "Drop the gun," Sarah caught it. Pressed it against Hayes's temple. "On your knees." Now, Hayes was panting, cradling her broken wrist. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You've sold operational intelligence? Got people killed. And tonight, you came to finish the job. I have my daughter." Hayes's voice cracked. "They took her 3 months ago. Said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill her." Sarah's grip on the pistol didn't waver. "Who has her?" "I don't know. I never saw faces. Just instructions. Dead drops. Encrypted messages. And tonight. They said this was the final job. Kill the general. Recover the files he had on me. Then they'd release my daughter." Sarah studied Hayes's face, saw the truth in her eyes. She was a traitor, but also a mother. "Where's your daughter now?" Sarah asked quietly. "I don't know. I swear I don't know." Saraya made a decision. She lowered the pistol. "Stay here. Don't move. Don't run. If you cooperate, we'll find your daughter." Hayes stared at her. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I've been where you are. And someone helped me once." Sarah pulled out her phone, made a call. "I'm also the only chance your daughter has." Within 3 minutes, the corridor was flooded with agents. Hayes was taken into custody, treated for her wrist, questioned. Sarah gave her statement to a man in a suit who never offered his name. The fire alarm was silenced. The hospital returned to normal. Almost. Dr. Chen found Sarah at 1 a.m. She was sitting in the break room again. Same coffee. Same tired expression. But her hands were shaking. Just a little. "It's over?" Dr. Chen asked. Sarah nodded. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Sarah." Dr. Chen sat down across from her. "I've been a doctor for 20 years. I know when someone isn't fine." Sarah looked up, met his eyes. And for just a moment, the mask fell away completely. "I broke a woman's wrist tonight, doctor." Held a gun to her head. Scared her so badly she wet herself. "And the worst part?" Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "The worst part is, I didn't feel anything. Not guilt, not anger, not satisfaction. Just nothing. You were doing your job. My job is supposed to save lives, not destroy them." Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "That woman came here to murder someone," he said gently. "You stopped her. Probably saved the general's life. Again, I know. And yet you're sitting here questioning yourself. Aren't I supposed to?" Dr. Chen smiled, sad, understanding. "Sarah, I don't know who you really are. I don't know what you've done, what you've seen. But I know one thing for certain." "What's that?" "You're a good person trying to do good things in a world that doesn't always allow for clean choices. That's enough." Sarah looked down at her shaking hands. "I hope you're right, doctor." Darked. "I am. And tomorrow, you'll come back. You'll put on these scrubs. You'll learn medicine. You'll help people. Because that's who you are underneath everything else." Sarah nodded slowly. Dr. Chen stood, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Get some sleep. You've earned it." He left. Sarah sat alone in the break room. Her hands gradually stopped shaking. She thought about Hayes, about her daughter, about all the impossible choices people made when they were desperate. Sarah had made plenty of those choices herself. She pulled out her phone, sent a message to her handler. Hayes's daughter. Find her. Bring her home. The response came back immediately. Already on it. Sarah pocketed the phone. Tomorrow, she would be back in these scrubs. Back to being nobody. But tonight, she had saved a life. And maybe that was enough. 3 days passed. Hayes's daughter was found in a safe. House outside Baltimore. Unharmed, scared but alive. Hayes was processed through military justice. Her sentence would be severe, but her cooperation had saved lives. And her daughter was safe. The general recovered. Strong enough to be transferred back to Fort Beaver, the hospital returned to its normal rhythm. Sarah showed up at 7:58 a.m., left at 6 p.m. Studied in the library. She was perfect at being invisible. But Dr. Chen noticed something different. She smiled more, laughed at nurses' jokes, actually engaged in conversations with other students. The weight seemed lighter. On Friday morning, Dr. Chen received a phone call. Oh, this is General Hardcastle. Is this Dr. Marcus Chen? Dr. Chen nearly dropped his coffee. Yes, sir, General. How can I help you? I'm being discharged today. I wanted to request something before I leave. Of course. Anything. I want to thank your staff personally. Specifically, I want to thank Sarah Bennett. Could you arrange for everyone to be present in the main conference room at 1400 hours? Dr. Chen glanced at his watch. That was 2 hours away. I'll make it happen, sir. Thank you. Doctor. The line went dead. Dr. Chen sat back in his chair. A 4-star general wanted to thank a medical student. Personally, this was going to be interesting. At 1:50 p.m., the conference room was packed. Nurses, doctors, residents, medical students. Even Patricia Reeves, the hospital administrator, everyone who had been involved in the general's care. Sarah stood near the back, confused. Dr. Chen had told her this was a mandatory meeting, but hadn't explained why. At exactly 2 p.m., the doors opened. General Hardcastle walked in. He wore his full dress uniform, 4 stars gleaming on his shoulders, ribbons covering his chest. Every inch the decorated war hero. Behind him walked a man in a suit, older, distinguished, the kind of face you saw on television. During national security briefings, Dr. Chen recognized him immediately. The director of the CI. The room fell. Silent, ladies and gentlemen. The general's voice filled the space. Thank you for being here. I know you're all busy. I'll keep this brief. He gestured to his head. The bandages were gone now. Just a neat scar visible at his hairline. 3 weeks ago, I arrived at this hospital with a life-threatening injury. Your staff saved my life. Your professionalism and dedication to care is a credit to this institution. Polite applause. The general held up his hand for silence. But there's someone in this room who deserves special recognition. Someone whose actions went far beyond the call of duty. His eyes found Sarah. Everyone turned to look at her. Sarah's face went pale. Sarah Bennett, would you come forward, please? Sarah didn't move. Dr. Chen saw the panic flash across her face. The desperate desire to disappear. To run, but she couldn't, not without drawing more attention. Slowly, she walked to the front of the room. The general smiled. Warm, genuine. Folks, I need to tell you something about this young woman. Something that's been classified. Until now? Sarah's eyes widened. Sir, at ease, Major. The room gasped. Major? Sarah Bennett is not a medical student. That has been her cover for the past 3 months. The general's voice was clear, proud. Her real name is Major Sarah Pierce. She is a special operations officer with Delta Force. She has served our country in 17 classified missions across 4 continents. She has saved countless lives. And she has done all of it in silence. The room was stunned into absolute silence. Dr. Chen felt his world tilt. Major Delta Force, everything suddenly made sense. 3 weeks ago, the general continued, when I arrived at this hospital, I refused surgery from Dr. Chanand. I apologize for that. Doctor, you're an excellent surgeon. But I knew I needed someone I could trust absolutely. Someone with the skill and the clearance to handle what might have been a compromised situation. He turned to Sarah. Major Pierce operated on me under the most difficult circumstances. She saved my life. And then, 3 days ago, she stopped a traitor from killing me. She did this while maintaining her cover, while protecting everyone in this hospital, while being underestimated at every turn. The general came to attention, and then he did something that made every person in the room hold their breath. He saluted. A 4-star general. Saluting a woman they had dismissed as a simple medical student. Major Sarah Pierce, on behalf of the United States military and the intelligence community, I thank you for your service. Sarah stood frozen. Then, slowly, she returned the salute. The room erupted. Applause, gasps, people talking over each other. The CIA director stepped forward. Major Pierce has completed her civilian medical training rotation. She'll be returning to active duty next week. But I wanted you all to know that for 3 months you worked alongside one of the finest operators this country has ever produced. He shook Sarah's hand. Cameras flashed. Someone had invited the press. This was deliberate, controlled. A public recognition of a hero who had spent years in the shadows. Dr. Chen pushed through the crowd. Sarah, Major Pierce, I don't know what to say. Sarah looked at him. And for the first time since he'd met her, she wasn't hiding. You can call me Sarah, doctor, and you don't have to say anything. You gave me a place to learn, a place to remember what it means to save lives instead of taking them. Thank you for that. Dr. Chen shook his head in wonder. I should be thanking you. You saved this hospital. Saved all of us. I was just doing my job. No, Dr. Chen smiled. You did everyone's job. Better than any of us could have. Patricia Reeves appeared at Sarah's shoulder. Major Pierce, I owe you an apology. When those agents took over my hospital, I was furious. I thought it was government overreach. Was, Sarah said simply. But sometimes overreach is necessary. Will you be coming back? To finish your rotation? Sarah shook her head. No, ma'am. I'm needed elsewhere, of course. Well, if you ever decide to leave the military, we'd be honored to have you on staff. Yes, Sarah smiled. I'll keep that in mind. The crowd pressed closer. Everyone wanted to shake her hand, to hear her story, to understand how they had missed the signs. Sarah handled it with grace, answered questions where she could, deflected the ones she couldn't. But Dr. Chen saw the exhaustion in her eyes. She was ready to go home. At 4 p.m., the crowd finally dispersed. Sarah stood alone in the now empty conference room. Dr. Chen found her staring out the window. How does it feel? He asked. Being recognized? Weird, Sarah admitted. I've spent 8 years being invisible. Now everyone knows my face. Is that a problem? Not anymore. This was my last undercover assignment. The director decided it was time to bring me in from the cold. What will you do now? Sarah turned to face him. I'll go back to Fort Bragg, train the next generation of operators, teach them what I've learned, and maybe, she paused, maybe I'll apply to medical school. For real this time? Dr. Chin raised his eyebrows. Really? I realized something over the past 3 months. I'm good at what I do, but I'm tired of breaking things. I want to build, to heal. To save lives without having to hold a gun? You'd make an excellent doctor. I'd make a mediocre doctor, Sarah corrected. But I'd work harder than anyone else. That has to count for something. Dr. Chen laughed. It counts for everything. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Will I see you again? Dr. Chen asked. Maybe, if I get into medical school. If the military approves it, if the world doesn't fall apart first. That's a lot of ifs. I'm used to operating on ifs, doctor. It's kind of my specialty. Sarah held out her hand. Dr. Chen shook it. Thank you, Dr. Chen, for treating me like a student, for not asking questions, You knew I couldn't answer. For trusting me when it mattered most. Thank you, Major Pierce. For reminding me that heroes don't always look like what we expect, and for showing me that the quiet ones are often the most dangerous. Sarah grinned. That's the whole point. She picked up her bag, walked toward the door, paused. Hey, doctor. Yes, that kid with the skateboard injury. The one I sutured. Can you check on him in a few days? Make sure the wound is healing properly. Dr. Chen smiled. Of course. I'll check on all your patients, thank you. And then she was gone. Dr. Chen stood alone in the conference room. Outside the window, a black helicopter was landing on the hospital roof. He watched Sarah emerge onto the rooftop, watched her climb aboard, watched the helicopter lift into the sky and disappear into the clouds. For 3 months, a legend had walked their halls, and they had never known. Dr. Chen pulled out his phone, texted his wife. You won't believe what just happened at work. Then he went back to his rounds, because people still needed saving. And whether you wore scrubs or combat boots, that was the job. Save lives. Protect the innocent. Stand between the darkness and the light. Sarah Pierce had done it in silence for 8 years. Now, finally, the world knew her name. But somewhere out there, in another hospital, on another base, in another city, there were others like her. Quiet warriors. Silent guardians. The ones you'd never notice. Until the moment you needed them most. And then, like Sarah, they would step forward. They would do the impossible. They would save the day. And then they would disappear back into the shadows. Because that's what heroes do. The real ones. The ones who don't need recognition. Who don't want medals or parades. Who just want to know that when they close their eyes at night, they made the world a little bit safer. A little bit better? Dr. Chen smiled and went back to work. Because somewhere in the world, someone just like Sarah was watching, waiting, ready to be the hero we'd never see coming. And that, Dr. Chen thought, was exactly how it should be.